Hi again, everyone. Welcome into Unanchored Boston with Bob Lobel. I'm Mike Lynch, and we are delighted today to have a Hall of Fame guest with us. We're going to have a great time talking Bruins hockey and old-time hockey. And as always, we're brought to you by Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping. And where? We're in New Hampshire, of course, and the great George Gray, the big wheel we call him at George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. All right, we're going to get to Gerry Cheevers right now, and as always, because he's the senior statesman of this group, Bob Lobel handles the introduction. Gerry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Slow day, Cheesy. It's only opening day of the baseball season, but we figured if the Red Sox can't pull it off, you got to do it. So,
all right.
You have any bets on opening day? Do you think the Red Sox can beat Texas today, or by how many runs?
I didn't know who. I knew it was opening day. I didn't know who the Red Sox were playing. I'm down in Florida. We get the Marlins, and who else do we get down here? Tampa Bay, I guess. But I do follow the Red Sox. I hope they do good. It's always good for the city, which I think needs some help.
Yeah, well, you know what? You were good for the city, too, in so many ways. In the 2 Stanley Cups and the Hall of Fame and money goaltender that your reputation had. But everything always comes back to that mask. Everything, every time Cheevers is brought up to that, it comes back to the mask. It doesn't say anything about your Stanley Cups or the Hall of Fame, and this was an accident, right? It was an accident.
Well, it was unique, and I give all the credit. But before I go any farther, you two guys would like to know that last night I went to dinner with Nate Greenberg here in Florida.
Wow.
And we had a great time. But anyway, getting back to the mask, when I originally, it took me a couple of years to get used to the mask. I couldn't see out of it. And the mask was made by Ernie Higgins from the South Shore there. And it was all white. And it drove me nuts. I had to do something. So we lived in the Andovers, North Andover. And every day I drove into practice, I said, I got to do something with this mask. And my second thought was always trying to get out of practice. Excuse me. And Harrison was coaching at the time. So the puck flipped up. And if I didn't have the mask on, it wouldn't have cut me. But I feigned like I was seriously hurt, went in the dressing room. And about 2 minutes later, Harry came in. He says, "You're not hurt. Get out there." So I went to return to the ice, and Frosty, legendary John Forrestal, excuse me, he said, "Hold it." And he painted a big stitch over my left eye. And it was a very significant. It was like a 12 stitcher. And I got out there, and the guys sort of laughed, and I went up to Harry, and I said, "See, this is very serious, Harry. And you didn't fool with Harry on the ice. He was a serious coach." And anyway, we started to mostly Frosty and myself. If the stick come up in a game and maybe got me in the right eye, he'd go paint 3 or 4. If I took one off the nose, he painted. That's how the mask begun. And as you guys said before, if I didn't do that to the mask, no one knew who in the heck I was.
But it's legendary. Oh. There it is right there.
That's a practice mask, by the way. My game mask didn't go anywhere near back towards the ears.
All I know is that when I played, I did a thing with Orb for the Baybanks between the periods of one game, and you let me use the mask. It was Reggie Lemlin kind of had me in practice at Boston College to get ready for it. Of course, I had no clue and no help whatsoever. But you let me put the mask on, and I wore it during that practice. It was quite a thrill, but I had to give it back.
Well, the mask right now, in all honesty, is on my grandson's wall. He's at Rice University doing a doctorate in medicine, and I've been offered an awful lot of money for that mask, but I give it to him as a gift, and it hangs on his wall, and I'm not allowed in there in case I steal it.
Is that the original mask, or
yes?
Really? So it's the same mask.
I wore the bigger mask that you just showed a picture of. I wore in practice and in exhibition games, but the game mask was the only one. The one that's on my grandson's wall is the one I used. That's the only mask I use. Well, when I first started wearing a mask, I experimented with a couple, but that's the one I used for my career. Yeah, there it
you
is.
are right
There.
there.
What a handsome guy.
Well, it looks in that picture like I know what I'm doing, but I really didn't most of the time.
Did you ever count how many stitches are drawn in that mask?
No, that was I don't think I've been asked that question before. No, I haven't. It was somewhat what's the word I'm looking for? It was trying to Proxy tried to analyze the blow to the mask, and this is 6 stitcher or 8 stitcher, and but we sort of picked it up a little bit.
So, Gerry, let's talk about the graduation from no mask to mask and how that happened in the whole league. And for so many years, so many guys never wore masks.
Well, that part of it, there's probably two steps. You know what? I never wore a mask in my first 3-4 years of pro, and I tried. When I come to Boston, I said I better wear a mask or I'm not going to make it, and I couldn't. My eye sockets are deep, and finally, like maybe my 4th or 5th year of pro, my 2nd year in Boston, or I had made the Bruins in 2 years. I said I got to wear a mask. And in those days, Jock Plant was the first one to put the mask on, and he did it without the grace of the Montreal Canadiens. So Blake was coaching, and he said, "The heck with it." Then there's the great goalies like Sodchuk, Johnny Bauer, Glenn Hall. They are all late in their careers. I don't know. You asked how many stitches I had in my mask. If you saw the great cover of Life magazine with superimposed stitches of Terry Sodchuk was on the cover. It was a famous picture of what his face would have looked like with the stitches, which it did. He had the stitches in. But what I'm trying to say is they all went to the mask, different forms of the mask. I was a pioneer because I was the first guy to decorate it. And I knew I had to do something. So the next step was from the mask we wore, and in a lot of situations, they weren't good enough. They weren't state of the art good. So the next step was these big cages they use. And in all honesty, I played till I was 41, maybe even 21 years. I tried to wear that mask at the end of my career, and it was just too heavy. It was to me like a diver's mask when they go deep sea diving, and it was so heavy I couldn't move it. So I wish that mask would have been popular 10 years before. I certainly would have used it because it looks quite safe as long as you can see out of it. I don't think there is a next step in masks.
You were a guy that a lot of those guys you just named, Jacques Plante, a lot of those guys, they just stayed between the pipes and moved side to side. You were a guy that moved out, cut down angles. You challenged a guy who had a breakaway. And do you think that accelerated the need for a mask?
Well, one of the thoughts I had when I used to blitz a guy or go at him is the farther out I got, the lower I'd get hit. Right? It's just a plain geometry. That question, I don't think so. I don't think so. We played different before the mask. We played behind guys, peeking out of guys, but in the mask it made you a little braver. And you got hit much more with the mask than you would have without the mask. There's no question about that because you played different. And your job as a goalie is to find the puck. And when I started using my mask, I had a tough time finding, especially at my feet. You have to know where the puck is all the time in that position.
Did it, when the puck hit the mask, did it hurt?
Well, I did because I said I had deep eyesight. I had to put sponge right on in the mask that sort of absorbed the blow right around my cheek, the cheekbone before your eye socket. Actually, the eye socket is where the sponge was. And to answer your question, no, I don't think it ever hurt. It was shocking or startling, but I never really got injured. We talked a lot, Frosty and I, and even the doctors about. They felt that I could have got hurt with that mask because the eye sockets were too deep, and it really didn't protect it. But I never did never had an eye injury.
Why the hell did you want to be a goaltender in the first place, for
Well,
Christ's
I've
sake?
been trying, Bobby. I'm 84 now, and I still haven't figured that out.
Jesus, come on, Gerry. I mean, you're
And I'll tell you how it happened. My dad was coach CYO hockey. I don't know if they had it in the States. It was a Catholic youth organization.
Yep.
And there's like 4 or 5 churches in my hometown, St. Catharines. And all of a sudden they started a church that we had to go to because of our residence. So we were on an expansion CYO team, right? And my dad was the coach, and we could beat the first game 15-0. I was a forward. And the little goalie never showed up the next game, and he didn't have the nerve to put anyone else in. So he put me in, and we got beat 13-0. I was 10 years old or something. I've been trying to get even ever since.
unbelievable.
But the question is, why would everybody? It's something like why we do what we do is once it started, I ended up loving it. And I'm glad I did. It was, I love playing goal. I didn't love practicing. That was the opposite. Once I got through practice and got to game time, it was great.
I almost wonder what kind of the balance between fear, desperation, athletic ability. I mean, you're alone there, hopefully with some help in front of you. Most of the time, I have no idea what is developing in front of you. And it's got to be no two plays are ever alike.
No, it's a spontaneous reaction most of the time, impulse.
What about coming in, breakaway? What kind of mental gymnastics do you?
I'll answer that question by this. Phil Esposito got traded to the Rangers, and you'll remember this as I tell the story. Now, Phil was one of the greatest goal scorers in history. I only practiced with him for 6 or 7 years. I sort of knew him. We're playing in Madison Square Garden. I think you know where I'm going to. It was the night of the brawl in the stands. But Phil Esposito, I looked up the clock, and if I have to talk and Phil's there, I always say it this way, that I look at the clock. Phil Esposito is on a clear-cut breakaway starting at his blue line. And I looked at the clock, and there's 40 seconds left. And I said, it's me against one of the greatest scorers in history. My best chance if the clock runs out by the time he gets near the net. Well, Phil never liked that. So anyway, I said to myself, Bob, your question was what goes through your mind? What's Phil thinking? Phil's thinking that I was a blitzing goalie, that I'd come out after him. He knew I was a terrible practice goalie. I was very good at getting out of the way. So I said to myself, as Phil's getting closer, what am I going to do? What's he thinking? He's thinking I'm going to come right at him. Well, I took one step at the top of the crease and never moved a muscle till this day, till it was all over. And he kept getting closer. I'm sort of grinning behind the mask, and closer and closer. He had no recourse but to shoot it in my belly, which was my strong spot. And he lifted my belly, went over to the left of the net, to the right of the net, broke a stick, and that's how. There's like 15 guys indicted after that. But so as they're fighting, I went in the dress. He broke a stick. I don't know if you remember this. I'm sure
I do. Yeah.
So he broke his stick. I went in the exit on and off the ice at Madison Square. It was right beside my net. So I go over there, and he's going down the hall the other way, and he's steaming. And I'm singing Philly Esposito. And all he did for 10 minutes was yell at me. He said, you never moved. You never moved. So to answer your question, sometimes there is strategy.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah.
So to follow up,
when I tell that story when we're at a banquet with Phil, it takes him a couple of days to get over it.
So just to follow up, we've had Milbury on, and we talked about this thing, ad nauseum. But you and Milbury were in the locker room already into your first beer when somebody figured out there's something going on in the stands behind you. Is that right?
Well, I didn't know. I thought I was the only guy in the dressing room. I don't think Milbury was in the room because obviously, all the subpoenas or whatever you call it, He was one of them. In fact, I remember Mike hitting a guy with a shoe. Didn't he hit a guy with a shoe in the stands?
But he says he said he was in the locker room and that somebody told him there was a fight going on in the stands and he came running out. So
Well, I don't remember that. He would have had to go by me on my way in. I know I wanted no part of the fight. That's the only guy didn't get subpoenaed. That's old time hockey, though.
yeah, it is old time hockey. Do you think they miss it, Jerry? Is it old time hockey versus what we have today?
I think there's certain aspects of it that we miss. I mean, is it good to talk about the brawls and the Madison Square Garden incidents and some things, the preseason games? They don't have that today. They could have it, but is it fair to say, boy, they don't know what they're missing? I don't think so. But it was. We were talking last night, an interesting question, and I won't tell you who. Nate, we were out with Nate, a couple of ex-Bruins down here in town, and we said, how would you guys fare today, your championship teams? And very quickly answered, we'd win. And that was an abrupt, quick answer. Why would you win to these? I said, we are a strong character team. We had the greatest players in the world, two of the greatest players in the world. We got together. Our third line was way better than third lines today. That's just a biased opinion. So I quickly said we'd win, and it sort of shocked some people. Not shocked them. In fact, my ex-teammates they kind of felt the same thing. So to answer your question, I felt our team, our style of hockey, and it always helps to have or an Esposito. That doesn't hurt your team. And so I answered that. So I'm not a big fan today. I watched the Panthers down here a little bit. They're sort of a team that might be compared to our era of all the teams in the league today. A lot of the favorites like Colorado and Edmonton, they're run and gun, great players. But the Florida team that I watch, it sort of reminds us they're a spunky group. They won the cup that way last year, and they'll be a threat this year. So, but there is a big difference, to be honest.
Speaking of Nate Greenberg, we had Nate on, and Nate was giving his version of the Madison Square Garden incident. And he said, naturally, you needed a police escort to get out of Madison Square Garden, and the guys took you to the tunnel and a motorcycle. They had 4 motorcycle cops. So Nate said he was up the front of the bus, and when he got to the tunnel, Nate opened the door to the bus and said thank you to the police officers. He said the guy went like this to him right there.
Right. But you talk about playing goal. Were you afraid? Were you scared? Did you play in fear? Probably the most fear I had was leaving Madison Square Garden in that bus, going through the tunnel of the gardens out onto the street. That was scary. The things went off off the bus that you were scared of. He was talking about Madison Square Gardens. I remember playing in Madison Square Gardens, the new one, and I played in the old one also. And it was a game. It was typical New York fans, New York Boston game, and people around. There's a little stuff, and people are throwing things on the ice. And I'm a goal. Never worried me. In fact, there was a beef in that game, and I went over to the bench, and they were throwing so much things at me that the bench had to go back to the net so they wouldn't get hit. I was there, and I see a copper with this, and all of a sudden I heard a clunk. It was a Yale lock that took a big chip, went over my head, took a big chip out of the ice. If it hit me, I think I would have been serious. That was a Yale lock from the top balcony.
Unbelievable.
How fast I was going, but they're heavy.
For one thing to throw a fish, it's another thing to throw a Yale lock.
Pardon?
It's the one thing to throw a fish. It's another thing to throw.
Yeah, right, or an octopus, but not a Yale lock. But that's New York fans for you.
You know what? That is old time hockey. I mean, it translated between the players and the fans and the teams and the way they were. And I think a lot of the rule changes probably affected the way the game's been played. The whole thing.
Just to repeat my answer, what I see and is this Panther team that I mentioned, they're the closest thing to when we played, and it's I don't know if it's the right way. And well, it is the right way because they won the cup last year.
Yeah, it's also the exciting way. I don't care if you'd
Yeah,
love
you're
to.
right. That's
You'd
good.
love to have Kachuk on your team any day of the week. He's kind of like the guy that behind the whole.
Well, how about now if they ever get healthy, they got to Chuck and Marchand.
Right.
I mean, Marchand's a great player, great player.
Did that trade surprise you that they sent Marchand to Florida?
No, I think I don't know the particulars of it, but I would think Marchand had a say in where he was going to go, and maybe they just ran out of territory for just send him to get the right picks or whatever they got for him.
Gerry, let me ask you this. You had a unique perspective being in goal, but you also got to see, we all saw the front side of Bobby Orr all the time because, that's the way TV cameras work. But you saw the back side of Bobby Orr and how he defended and as he back skate and how he broke up breakaways. And just tell me about that perspective from where you stood every single night with number 4.
Well, first of all, he had the puck for like 30 minutes, so that's pretty good defense.
Yeah.
And Bobby was like in the American Bobby Fischer, the great chess player. He was so far ahead of the rest of the players. His thinking was so quick, so far in front of what the other team's players were doing. He just reacted. And I'll tell you the truth here. When I played, I liked my defense to stay up as far as they could stay up. The better for me to analyze and take the shots.
You mean to stay up toward the blue line?
Yeah, just stay up. Now, we had a good defense, and not very rarely. I mean, you might have Yvonne Cornway going 100 miles an hour come around you, but not often. So when the defense backed in, it gave these guys a chance to be shooting through screens and all that. But anyway, I had, two or three, Donnie Ari, Dallas, Rick Smith, they stood up, and I loved playing with them. And because the shot I was going to get was off to the side most of the time because they stayed up and they had to go wide. But Bobby was so far ahead of the play. So, like I said, like I guess in chess, if you're 3 steps ahead of the next guy. And we used to have some very heated arguments, and I used to tell him to, Bobby, stay up, stay up, stay up. And he'd say, let me do what I want to do. So my argument wasn't very good there. And so he'd come, there he is. I think that might be in New York, or maybe it is in New York when we won the cup.
Yeah, you're right.
And so Bobby, he'd be so ahead. To answer your question, he was just, he'd back in a little bit, and we had some discussion over that. But I always end up with the puck. He was he was fearless. He was one of the most fearless defensemen I ever played with. And by that, I mean blocking shots. I mean, I think management or everyone talked to him, get out of the way. I used to tell him, my pads are much bigger than yours. Let me block them. And he loved blocking shots. He was fearless. And but he always got the step, and as soon as he got it, I just marveled at how quick he got the puck out. We were playing St. Louis in our first Stanley Cup, I believe. Yeah, and it was sort of a lopsided series, even though I'll tell you a story in a minute about the final game. But we played in St. Louis, and when the other team shot the puck in, very selfishly, I always made sure that I stopped it and left it for Bobby, because chances are he's going through the whole team. I was going to get the second assist, right? Which goalies don't get assists. So in one shift in St. Louis, in the second game, they shot the puck in. I fielded it. I left it for Bobby. He went the whole length of the ice in about 10 seconds, circled the net, and passed it out to Chief, who scored. I got an assist in that only because I left the puck there. They didn't give it to me. I did the same thing the next shift. The same thing happened. I don't know if Chief got the goal. Bobby went through the whole team, left it. I had 2 assists in one shift in a Stanley Cup game and never got credited for it, which disturbs me. Not really. But talking about Bobby, and we won our first cup, on Mother's Day, 1970, I believe it was. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. But, it's a famous Bobby Orr goal, first minute of overtime. And I took full credit for that goal because that made it 4-3 overtime. I was no more interested in that game than I knew we were going to win. I was terrible. I let 3 of the worst friggin' goals in history to force it into overtime so Bobby could get that goal. If I would have made one save, you might never have heard of the guy. But we talk about that all the time. That was a fun team. It was, what, that team, and I talk to Bobby all the time. That team, actually, he was at dinner with us last night. We talked. Our third line, Derek Sanderson, Eddie Westfall, and Donnie Marcotte.
Yeah.
That's as good as the line. That was a terrific line.
Yeah.
And our second line, Chief and Freddie and Pye, and in the first line, the big guys there. I mean, that was a pretty darn good team. And I don't know, and I don't follow that close. And you guys might have been watching the Bruins that are obviously struggling, but and they were good. I don't know if their third line was ever as that good.
No, all 20 goal scorers. All
yes, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and something else. And I remember it's one of those, where were you when man landed on the moon? Well, where were you on Mother's Day, May 10th, 1970? In New England, everybody knows where they were. And
if you were to ask me where I was that night, I couldn't tell you.
I remember your breakup party was at the Hawthorne by the Sea in Swampscott, which is where I grew up. And all you guys came out into the balcony. We were all on the beach and just looking up there, trying to get near you guys. And you guys came out we brought the cup out in the balcony. And there must have been 5,000 people on the beach just looking up at you guys, just cheering. The adulation for you, and then the parade that followed. I mean, they talk about big parades for the Celtics and the Patriots, but that one right there was as big as it gets.
Yeah, I think I remember that day, but it was a great day. Our first parade. I think the second time we just went to City Hall. We took a little parade route to the City Hall, but yeah, I'm enjoying this chat because it brings back those memories of what you just mentioned and that team. That was, people keep saying, should you have won it more? There's the team there. Yeah. Should you have won it more? Maybe. But don't forget, the Montreal Canadiens had 8 Hall of Famers in theirs. And I'm going to go to my grave feeling, why didn't we beat the Canadiens? And we had chances, don't get me wrong. And we never did. And I would think the 2 years we won, in a 6-year period, they probably won it the other 4 times. I'm not sure about that, but that always bothered me. But then, and we never, Mike, we never hated the Canadians like we hated the Rangers, or in future years we hated the Flyers. We never hated them. I'll tell you a funny story. Bob Gainey, who was a big, I don't have to tell you Bob Gainey, big 6'3", strong skater, punishing hitter. I figured we're going into Montreal one day, and there was always, I said, I'm going to sort of straighten this situation out, or at least put some oil on the fire. They shot it in, and I went and fielded it, and coming 100 miles an hour, Bob Gainey. So I waited, and I said to myself, I'm going to jump into him and lay him out flat in a pancake. Well, the thought was good, except he ran over me and laid me out flat in the pancake. So that thought there didn't really work. But what I'm trying to say is, Flower. How could you hate Guy Lafleur? How could you hate Yvonne Cornway? How could you hate Serge? I mean, I hated Dryden, but that was a selfish hate.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to ask you. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he, but that team.
How could you hate John Beliveau?
How could you hate John Beliveau? I mean, and the only guy you could probably hate in their old era was Rocket, because he's such a fiery guy. But that was before us anyway. Yeah, but how could you hate John Beliveau? He said, "Oh, excuse me," if he'd bump into you. How could you hate a guy like that? Then he put one over your shoulder for the winning goal.
Well, you guys nowadays it's a love affair, but teams get on the ice, they get on the court, they get on the field, they're exchanging jerseys after the game. Were you friends with any of those guys in the Montreal Canadiens?
Not at the time.
Yeah.
I end up
Good.
playing, I forget what year it was, either 76, I think it was. And that's when I got to be friends with Peter Mahovlich, Flower, Robbie, Yvonne. They were terrific guys. And that's when I come to the conclusion that we never hated them. We used to go into Philly and I used to sharpen my sticks up, just to get someone. But we never felt that way against the Canadians.
Well, when you were growing up in St. Catharines, were you a Montreal fan?
Oh no, it's all Toronto. It's Toronto.
Yeah.
But in those days, Toronto, Montreal, that was a great rivalry, obviously. But I was the Leafs fan, owned by the Leafs eventually before I went to Boston.
Right.
No, I was never a Montreal fan. Never.
Well, listen, Jerry, I got to throw in a quick sponsor here because then I want to talk a little bit about your love of gambling and betting and Newmeyer and the horses and how you used to flag down Lynch at Indian Ridge to get bets on the Ivy League schools. But
No,
I got to do this commercial first. I don't know if you're a camper or not. You ever done any camping, or you just camped out in front of the net? That was your.
No, camping is the farthest thing from my mind.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring it to your attention right there. So, okay, just bear with me here because campers, Cold Springs RV had the latest in pop-ups, travel trailers, fifth wheelers, and motorhomes, and right now, and they have to be the closest thing to our mind right now because we're here because they're here. So go browse their full lot and tell them Lobel and Lynchy sent you and shop now for the best selection of 2025 models. They're like freedom. You can go and, camping is freedom because if you want to go to a campsite and you're by yourself and you have your own camper, then who knows who's going to park next to you. You might get lucky. You might get lucky and, find some smoking hot potential companion in the next camper over. And if they don't leave by midnight, maybe you got something going. If not, they could just pull out and leave. So it's just about freedom. I don't think I said that really well. Anyway, 2025 Cold Springs RV in Ware, New Hampshire. You can learn more online at coldspringsrv.com. All right, since I screwed that up, I go right back to the gambling
What about the question? I got the question first, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm screwing everything up. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right, Jerry. So we do this with every guest. We remember John Madden wouldn't fly, so he had a Madden Cruiser. He drove everywhere. So we're going to get Cold Springs RV to make a Lobel Lynchy Cruiser. And when they finally build it, it could be 20 years from now. We're all going to be dead. But you get to use it for a week, okay? You get to drive it from cross country from Florida to the West Coast. We'll fly you back. The only thing is you got to pick one person to ride shotgun with you. It could be somebody from the world of hockey. They could be alive. They could be deceased. They could be somebody in entertainment. It could be politician. It could be another sport. Who would you like to ride shotgun with you cross country? Who would you pick?
Secretariat.
That's the greatest. That's the greatest. Only you and Newmeyer will give that answer.
An RV, you just put a little trailer at the end. He'd be great. You'd get a lot of response to who's driving with you. A secretary, one of the greatest racehorses of all time.
Big Red.
We used to ask, our games if you had to invite 5 people in the history of the world to your big party, who it would be. And I always had Secretariat as one of them. People, Hitler, Churchill, whoever. I always had my Secretariat. That's what
Lynchy had the great line. I got to tell you this. And Mike, you got to repeat it. The Newmeyer. Okay. It had to do with Secretariat and Newmeyer and Lynch. And it was Lynchy had this great line. Go ahead, Mike. Do you remember what it was?
Well, it was a big, something's going on with the Bruins. We were all at the Garden, and somebody said, "Well, where the hell's Newmeyer?" And I said, "He's probably at Secretariat's funeral." Oh, wait.
Well, it was probably, but Bob, I'll tell you, Bob, you talk about playing horses, that's all I did was play horses. He got into horses as good as anyone I've seen in depth. We were partners a few times, but Bob was a tough guy to be partners with. He was just a little too deep for my thinking, I think 4-1, it's worth the price, But
Yeah.
he was very good at it.
Yeah, he offered to teach me. He said, Lobie, if you want to know my system, be more than happy to take you over to Suffolk. And I said, I want no part of it. I could never even comprehend what he was talking about.
No, you're right. He was very deep. He did something one day I'll never forget, and he hit a pick six, which means you have to hit 6 races. It was at Santa Anita too. And one of the races had 12 horses in it. None of them had run. And so what do? I mean, you take them all? You can't. So he hit it by taking a horse that was maybe one of the last ones you'd take, right? And I said, Bobby, how'd you do that? He says, I could only take one. And he says, I'd studied the breeding apart. And that one horse is why he won the pick six that particular day. He was good, very good.
Very good. Yep. And we'd go to the Celtics. We go to the Celtics playoffs in Milwaukee. We'd have an off day, and he'd say to me, "What are you doing tomorrow morning?" I said, "I'm sleeping." He says, "No, you're not. I need you to drive me down to Arlington Park." So I drive, and he'd have his racing form out, the paper, and the whole the hour and a half ride was Newmarket. We go to L.A. L.A. was easy because Hollywood Park was right next to the Forum.
But Bobby, he did some games for us. I was traveling with the Bruins team. I don't know what I think I was doing. I might have been the color guy for a while. And we went to places like Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Winnipeg. They all had racetracks, but it wasn't their racing. It was simulcast. We were there at 10 in the morning, 10, whatever it was, whatever city we were playing, he had sent for the sheets, and we were there by ourselves.
No, he was unbelievable, Gerry.
Yes, he was.
Never saw anybody like him in that regard. But my other question is, to do that, to put that kind of money out, and I know he's won big, and I know he's lost big, and you got to be either you're fearless or just plain stupid. You either have to be, have total courage and not worry about the losses. I don't know what the mindset is, but maybe you could explain it.
Well, Bob knew me. He treated it like a profession. I mean, I've always thought it was a recreational sport for me, and you make a few bucks, you lose a few bucks. But he took it serious. I don't know what he spent. It was my I don't even know if we didn't go partners often or at all. And so I don't know how he did it, but he had he treated it professionally is what I'm trying to say. I never did. And he was a good handicapper.
Keelan, can you put that picture back up of Gerry with the horse? This horse had a unique name, I think, right? What was the name of the horse, Cheesy?
Well, I don't know who this was. It could have been Score for Or. It could have been Royal Ski, or it could have been Captain Cash, or it could have been Doki. Believe it or not, most horses look the same to me. But that could be Royal Ski. I don't know who it says it is. Is that Score for?
Is that Rockingham?
Yeah.
Score for Or, I think it is.
I lost Score for in the first time I raced him at Rockingham. Someone claimed him.
Okay.
You want to know something funny? When I bought these babies, and you had to name them, they had to go through the Jockey Club in New York. I almost named Royal Ski Score for Or, and Royal Ski was a very good horse. He got sick on us, and he never made the Derby, but he was going to. That would have been nice, but Score for Or. He first time he raced at Rockingham, or the second time.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Pretty interesting. So if you want to name a horse, you got to go through this thing, you got to go through a board in New York to make sure it hasn't been used.
The Jockey Club, yeah.
Jockey Club.
Yeah, and I'm sure in the course of a year, there's thousands of horses that have to be named that they turn down a lot. I'm sure there's people in there, and not very often do they sneak by a name that shouldn't be named something, sexually or politically or something like that. They never get those by, and a horse's name can't be duplicated in in a period of time, 30 or 40 years. So,
You like that picture right there, Jerry?
what I was trying to figure out is Maple Leaf.
Yeah, Maple Leaf. It was taken last year. You're not going to believe this. So, and look whose jersey I wanted to have.
I can't see that.
Frank Mahovlich,
Oh,
27.
the Big M.
The Big M.
The Big M's. The Big M is in Sudbury, Ontario today, celebrating his sister's 90th birthday. Don't
Is
have to
that
tell
right?
that, but I know that. The Big M
So,
is one of the greats of all time. He
and
was
that was your team growing up, right?
Hmm?
That was your team growing up, Toronto.
Yep. I actually played a couple of games for him as a 20-year-old.
Yeah, were you a goalie when you played for him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. So, what was the so hard about beating the Canadians in a playoff series for decades and decades?
Well, in our era, and I never want to say this, but they had a lot of good players, and so did we. And then all of a sudden, Dryden come on the scene, and I guess he was better than me.
Do
And
you really believe that?
pardon, hopefully that didn't decide the series. But they Montreal just they did things right. If you looked at some stats that people don't look at, they went. They didn't go offside. What's the word? On offside, they were less offsides than their team by hundreds over every other team in the league. And that's a discipline situation. They're stupid penalties if they're labeled that way. They were the least in the league. They were a very disciplined team with great players, right? It's one year we had a chance to beat them. I'll never forget. Uh, Flowers scored on me in overtime. It was probably the best period of hockey I ever played in my life. They had like 20 shots in overtime, and he come down right wing, and I had a good beat on the shot. I knew he's a right-handed shot on the right wing, so I had a little edge there. And I looked for a fraction of a second. I peeked to the front of the net to see what's coming down, and till this day, no one believes me, but it was Big Larry Robinson, and I cheated like a niche. I cheated, and he put it in the short side. A terrible goal in my half, and that's what beat us out too. I'm not saying we're going to win the series if it didn't go in, but that things like that happen. I mean, they too many men on the ice with Grapes with coach in there. And Gilbert played goal. He was fantastic. Yeah. It's just things I don't know. I wish I knew.
Cliff King, the old sports writer for the Globe, used to say there were Lilliputians at the end of the rink, and when the Canadians they tilt the rink like this, so the Canadians are always skating downhill, and the Bruins were skating uphill.
Well, that could be. Don't forget, we had one period though that we'd have the advantage, but no, it seemed that way at times. But you know what? I still go back to my original thought. We just never hated them. We never hated them. And going into Montreal to play a Saturday night game, where if you took a walk in the morning, there'd be thousands of Bruins there, and it's so why maybe we beat Philly a lot, so I'm happy about that.
Well,
Mike, are you still at Indian Ridge?
I go up there. I had a stroke 2 years ago, so I can't play, but I still go up there. I'm still friends with all the guys.
Yeah.
We lost a lot of them. We lost Wenty and Jack McMonagle
Yeah.
this year, and it's that time of life. They're dropping like flies.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will say, it was a very unique club in you. Yeah, I don't tell you that.
I was remember the payphone just outside the grill room.
I have plenty of stories about those.
So I was dating my wife at the time, and I told her I'd be home by 1:00, and I was staying for a few beers. So the phone had a piece of paper on it that says "out of order," but I could see Eddie Max on the phone like every 10 seconds, and I'm so stupid, he hangs the phone up. I go over and I call my wife to be, Mary Ellen. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to be. And he comes over and he goes, the phone is out of order. And I said, no, it's working great right now. He said, no, the phone's out of order. I said, no, I got a crystal clear signal. I'm talking to my wife down in Winchester. He presses the receiver down. He goes, the phone is out of order. And I said, oh, now I get it. So and I was so.
I know exactly where that phone was because we used to play cards, and the
Yes.
first table is the locker room, right? And I knew what Eddie did, but I didn't, and he was a good friend. And Eddie was sort of he was taking bets, to put it that way.
Yeah.
So we used to play hearts there all the time. We had good games. And anyway, when the phone rang, he'd get up and answer it, right? And Eddie wasn't a sports enthusiast. In fact, I didn't even know he was doing that business. And I heard him say, "Yeah, you got 200 on Tommy John." Right? Who, I don't have to tell you who that is. He comes down to the table. We're playing cards, and he nudges me. He said, "Who's Tommy John pitch for?" He took the bet. Had no idea who Tommy John was.
Oh, they were great. I remember you used to tee off. Colin Hearn was your caddy.
Yeah.
And you used to tee off with a 4-iron all the time. Is that right?
Till this day, I can't hit a wood very good.
But you were hitting a 4-iron. You were a lefty golfer, right?
Right.
Yeah. And Colin Hearn was always your caddy. And every once in a while, I got to play behind you. And then you found out that I was doing Harvard football games on the radio, and we had some nice conversations about that. Believe it at that, right?
Well, I can't admit to that. But Indian Ridge was very unique, and we had some great matches. I loved you were a pretty good golfer, Mike. Did you play in club championships?
No, I wasn't that good. I was lucky if I got to be a 10, maybe.
Well, you were there. You talk about Colin Hearn, but I don't think it was Colin. And this is unbelievable. One year at the U.S. Open, it was played at Pebble Beach. Indian Ridge had 4 guys in the final 64. Do you remember that, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to Oppenheimer, who's still playing.
Yep.
You tell me. Nettie Etton's boy.
Yep.
Gil Martin.
Yep. Paul Gilmartin, Johnny Gilmartin.
And there's a 4th one. All Indian Ridge, they made the 60. I don't think anyone made to match play. But
yeah, his dad was coach at Bentley, I think. I can't remember his, but he was a good player.
Right. But 4 guys. In fact, Glennie and Heidi Aramo flew out with Jimmy Oppenheimer to watch their boy. Johnny Miller's kid was in that.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, old Indian Ridge, pretty good.
All right, the WHA, is that the when you do over again, not do over again?
I do it over again. Here's what happened. We just won our 2nd cup, and I don't mind talking about this. And I made 50,000. I mean, I'm not going to get paid like Bobby or Phil or anything, but I made 50,000. I lost 4 games that year, and
unbelievable.
No intention. I wanted to stay with this team. This team was going to win. Hopefully, health wise. So Charlie Mulcahy was. I don't even know what he was. He was a lawyer for the team. The day before he went to New York, where we won 3-0 to win the cup, he said, "I want to talk to you about next year's contract." And I said, "Charlie, get away from me. I got a game to play tomorrow." Blah blah blah. So he was doing the negotiations. So we won. I lost 4 games that year. 2nd cup. Pretty much of my prime. Offered me a $5,000 raise. What's the reality of the WHA? And it really hurt me. In fact, I think I spent the next couple of days at the Fours having a few beers. I was hurt. And so, okay, that was the first conversation. But now Larry Gordon, I don't know if you remember Larry. He ended up running the Edmonton Oilers. But he was a friend of mine from Rochester, living in Boston. He said, "Gerry, just got a call. Cleveland just got your rights to the WHA," which I didn't know. I thought New England said they weren't taking any Bruins, the Whalers. "You want to go to see?" Yeah, I said, "Yeah, let's go. First class, this and that." So we get in the first class, and we had a couple Bloody Marys. We land, and Nick Valetti, the famous, who just passed away recently, I think, had lunch with us. And he says, "We'll meet tonight at dinner." And I said, "Okay." So So he says, I want you to think what you want to come to Cleveland. I said, okay. So Larry and I don't hash it out. I said, Larry, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving that team in Boston. I want $1 million for 4 years, which was unheard of in the hockey world.
Yeah.
So we go have dinner, and Nick said, what do we need to get you? And I quickly said, $1 million for 4 years. He said, you got a deal. I said, hold it now. So this is a good story. So he says, well, it has to be more complicated than that. It has to be 7 years. And the original deal was 1,750,000 for 7 years with 1 year up front. That's the deal it was. So I go back, and Mulcahy's up to said, what do you want? I said, I want 300,000 over 3 years. I don't care how you pay it. Now, significantly difference in salary. And he says, well, we're here to offer you 60,000 or 2 years at 120. I said, Charlie, get lost. And Charlie I'm not a big fan of this. So anyway, I don't know how well you knew Tommy Johnson. He was our coach.
Yeah.
So Tommy calls me. He says, you going to Rockingham today? I said, yeah, I go every day. Why wouldn't I go today? So he said, I'll meet you on the roof up there. We had a mutual friend up there. So he comes up. He was coach of the Bruins. And he said to me, I'm here to offer you the same that the Cleveland Crusaders are offering you. I said, really, Tommy? I said, they offered me $1,750,000 over 7 years. And he looked at me and said, do they need a coach? That's Tommy Johnson for you. So I was willing, but the Bruins, and I don't want to blame the Bruins. And you asked me what I do it again. Certainly I do it again. I had to. And that's why in this situation last few years with the golf, how could I possibly say knock the players that went to live? I can't knock that.
Yeah.
I maybe it's, I don't know. It's a whole different situation than I went, but I went for the money, and and it worked out that they had no money after 4 years, and I come back to Boston. But it was a great time. I met a lot of friends I still talk to and see every day that I would have never got to know if I didn't go to Cleveland. And
You guys played in the Cleveland Arena, right?
the old arena, yeah. Where
You know what? Grew up in Ohio. I've been in that building. All right, just to let you know.
You want to talk about old time hockey playing in that building, and it was such a different building to play in.
Oh my God!
Glass, they had screens, and when they shot the puck in, it would hit the screen and drop. And there was more collisions there than I ever seen in my life. But it was a fun rink to play in. The first game, we were the first game in the WHA. We beat the Quebec Nordiques 2-0. They had J.C. Tremblay, Mark Tardif, Reggie Houle. Pretty good team. We beat them 2-0. You know who coached the Nordiques that game? Rocket Richard.
Wow.
So we won the first game.
That's amazing. It was amazing. The thing was a barn. It was an unbelievable arena.
Oh, yeah, it was great. But my favorite part of that first year in the WHA, and we had great games. I think the Whalers might have won the cup that year. I'm not sure. But was going back and playing. We played in the old Northeastern rink against the Whalers, and we had great games. They had a very good goalie, Al Smith, a guy that someone should write a book about, Al Smith. And we had great games. It was a lot of fun. Then we played them in the playoffs in the Gardens. It was great.
Coaching. What did you enjoy the most about it, and what did you detest about it?
First of all, I probably detested more than I enjoyed. When I went in coaching, I had a knee problem that I was going to have a major operation to play again. Mentally, I was ready to play, but I went and saw Doc Aarons, and he said I have to open and reconstruction. Things are going good, so I went into Harry on a Friday, and I said, Harry, I'm retiring. That's it. He said, okay, without hesitating, okay. He says, you got the next Friday to become coach if you want to coach the Bruins, which I never thought of, never entered my mind. And I went home, talked to my wife, talked to my friends. Why not? But the problem was I was making $250 at the time, I think the coaches only made 70 or 80 at the time. I was having to take a major cut and fade and gain 1,000 more problems. But I think, and it wasn't on their part, but I ended up coaching a team I played with for a long time. I'm coaching players that were teammates of mine that would go to dinner on the road, and I don't think a coach can be that way. But in all fairness, they were the guys that were great towards me, the guys I coached. Cash and Smitty and who else, Sheppy and all these guys. They were really good. And I had no idea about coaching. Believe me, I knew about hockey, but I didn't know about coaching. And what happened was we were terrible at the start. I got an attack of appendicitis, and I had to miss a couple of games. I think Harry and Gary go coach. I sort of started to lay back, recuperate, and say, do this, everybody do this. And we were the best team in the league the second half of my first year. And I think I won the Sporting News Coach of the Year. And I'm not saying this egotistically too, but we had a tough time finding a goalie after I left. And we tried lots, and we had some kids, and we weren't very successful in the playoffs. And to answer your question, I enjoyed it. But when you sit down and think about it, there's only one winner every year. Everyone else lost. And everyone else lost. I know that's not a good way to look at it. There's only one team that wins the cup every year, one team that wins the championship, and the other teams are basically losers. So it's a very difficult position to be a coach in any sport, actually. But and it really answered your question. I was glad when Harry fired me. When he said you're fired, I was the happiest guy in the world.
Really?
We were close. I think my record was good, but I wasn't a professional coach. These guys today, they're all professional. They look at the game from every angle. I used to say, shoot it in. I was like grapes. Shoot it in, take the body, get in front of the net, and try and score more than them. That was my strategy. Nowadays, you
How
could get
much, Jerry,
actually.
how much did the ownership in Buffalo affect the running of the club? And when you talk about,
I think that Jeremy Jacobs was hands on, but I don't think he had any effect on running the club. And the reason I know this is we were playing in Buffalo 2 weeks before I get fired, and I knew Jeremy very well. His company, Sports Service. I worked at the 40-year racetrack in the summer in PR, and they were the concessionaire, Sports Service, and Jeremy was serving his apprenticeship there at Fort Erie, so I got to know him. Anyway, getting to this in Buffalo, we're going in, and I got word that Jeremy wants to see me at their Blades and Boards Club, whatever it's called in Buffalo. So I go there, having dinner. Calls me aside. He says, "I want you to know that you're going to be our coach here for as long as you want." And I got fired 2 weeks later. So that tells you, that answers the question basically. But I think he was involved in what's going on type thing. But I don't think. In fact, I know he never said do this, do that to Harry. I don't think he could or would.
right. I didn't know financially how much of the strings he held. And
Well, financially, it was his football, I guess. So I don't know much about that part of it, but I don't know. He was a very influential owner amongst the owners, and which I'm sure he has seniority in the owners of these teams nowadays. But yeah, I'm not. I don't think he was just an interested owner, really interested owner.
I was, I think Numi was with me as well. We were both in Los Angeles. That's where you got fired, right?
Yes, it was Santa Anita.
I felt bad for you because I said, it's going to be lonely now. Do they actually pay for your plane ticket to come back home, or you have to find your own way home after you get fired?
I think I went into expenses. They owed me some money, but after I got fired, I mean, where else could you? Better for a guy like me. I got fired at Santa Anita. Days, stopped off in Vegas for 2 days, and finally made it home. In fact, I remember you guys at the press conference. I remember Numi, Mike. I'm sure you were in the business then, right?
Yep, I was there. Yep.
And I remember that. And hey, it was. There's a couple other deeper things into it that I don't talk about, but it was very much a relief.
And that's interesting.
That's when, and I took a year off. Things were okay.
I think O'Reilly said kind of the same thing, that he really wasn't a coaching material. He just didn't. O'Reilly.
No, but he was. I'll tell you what. He was much more into it than I was. Terry's a very heavy thinker. I think when they hired him, they were going to get everything they could out of Terry. That's the way he is, and I think he'd cross all T's and dot all I's and take it by the horn. That's the way Terry is. But you're right. I mean, if you're a decent player, what makes you a good coach? The old Peters principle. But
right.
I would never do it. Would I do it again? Probably at that time. But anyway, I was about to say, Mike Bob, that Ronnie Ryan, remember Ronnie, Mike? Sure.
Yeah.
He offered me the job in Sports Channel 2 years later, which was a God save because it was in Hartford. They're a new team. In fact, I think Numi was there a year before, maybe.
Yeah.
And I met my partner for 11 years was Rick Peckham. We just they rounded him at Tampa Bay, and he was a great announcer. And we had a good time. We actually won a New England Emmy, I think. I don't know what that means, but
okay.
I'm sure you guys want to feel.
You guys that already have them, it means that. Okay.
I bet you guys, I'm sure, have a couple, don't you?
Down, but that's exactly what they are, right?
Well, at least I had mine at home when I put my hat on it. So.
Hey, let me do a quick spot here for our good friend George Gray. Hey, if you're thinking about a new vehicle, a new car, go where Lobel and Lynch go. Go see our good friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. We've been customers for years. Our families, our relatives have been friends because we know that George Gray and his staff is going to treat you right. They're a family-owned and operated dealership that we trust and you can trust as well. Go see the big wheel, the great George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. There he is right there with number 4. Who's the GOAT there, George Gray or the other guy's got his arm around? I think George Gray's up there. But
that looked like Derek.
It looked like Derek, right? Yeah, with white hair, white mustache.
Yeah.
That's George Gray.
You in touch with Derek?
I talked to Derek. Well, last year was unique because it was a centennial year.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time together. And Derek and I, on occasion, have talked about, I don't know, Mike, if you were at the golf tournament down at the Ridge Club, but it got rained out one year. So Derek and I and Ray Bork sat and had a hot stove league that was well accepted. And the Bruins asked Derek and I to do a little hot stove leave or fireside chat, I guess they call it, at the Kowloon. And we did that and went over good too. So I said, Derek, make a few bucks at this but I don't go up there in the summer anymore. I'm going up this year for a wedding. My girlfriend's granddaughter's getting married. So we'll be there for August and September. So maybe we'll do something with Derek. Derek is Derek's unique. He's a sharp guy, smart guy, and he can warble.
Yeah, he was. I worked with Don Gillis for a while, and I can remember that he told me one day his daughter came home and said, "Dad, I'm bringing somebody over for Thanksgiving dinner. The guy I'm dating, Derek Sanderson." I thought Don Gillis's eyes were going to fall out of his head.
It worked out good.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, worked out fine. But Don had been covering Derek during his wild days, I think is a nice way to frame it. And here he was as his son-in-law now.
Oh, that's, well, Derek is, till this day, I know he went through a lot, Derek. Hopefully not as much as that people think he went through.
Yeah.
You guys were amazing, Gerry. There's no question about it. The whole crew was just an amazing collection of personalities that lasted more than just one team. It just was kind of a passed on from Harry on to Cherry, through you, through Orr, through Sanderson. You can just name these guys, not even talk about like Winsink or Jonathan or these other fighters or Knuckles or all these other guys that were part of characters.
Yeah.
Mulberry, O'Reilly. We've talked about a couple of them tonight. It was an amazing collection. It was like a fraternity in a way. There's Derek right there.
All we're missing there is Curly or Mo. But it's funny.
You got the horse in the sport coat.
Yeah, right.
It looked like some horse is going to be cold in the barn tonight.
But that team we're talking about, our team. There was an old team in St. Louis, the Gassos gang, weren't they? The St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't believe there were any Gassos in this team we had. And Gassos, I didn't even know. Was that Red Shandings and Usual?
Yep.
Yeah.
The great above all, everything Bob mentioned is true. Every one of you was a good guy and still is to this day. And that's, in our business, it was so easy to cover you guys, to work with you guys, because you were real. I mean, and you guys always are real. You're all unvarnished. And it was just, we all consider ourselves lucky to know all of you guys.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot to us.
Yeah.
True. So true. We all talk about it all the time. Who were the best players to deal with? What sport? Hockey. No question about it.
Right here. Nobody's in second place. I mean, it's hockey, and then who's in third, fourth, and fifth place?
By the way, Emmys don't mean anything until you don't have one. Then all of a sudden they're important.
But it was a fun time, fun team. Like I said earlier in the podcast, maybe we should have won more. Maybe we did things that we shouldn't have done that stopped us from winning. But still, we did win, and we had a winning team.
Well, I remember that get together at Kowloon last year, and you just look at that group picture and just go right across the row and said, "Great guy." Everyone was a great guy. Everyone has 1,000 different stories, and you're all bonded by that spoke B on your chest.
How can you not bring up the Cashman call for Chinese food? I mean, of all the stories that
no one knows this, but in fact, Cash has had his back worked, had a surgery on his back, and he's recuperating too. Cash is one of the smartest guys on our team. He was highly intelligent, and for him to order Chinese food, that's just one phone call. It was pretty creative, to say the least. Too.
That is pretty good, because everyone, when you tell the story, everyone thinks you had to call Harry, with this one phone call. Harry, chewed him out. No, he called Kowloon.
I would think of that.
All right. Thanks, Gerry. Thanks so much.
Hey, I enjoyed that, guys. Thanks for having me, for sure. Anytime you need me, I'm here. And Mike, they say to me, "Do you play much golf in Florida?" And my answer is only once a day.
Yeah, I'm over on the. Oh, let me ask you this: I did a high five on your granddaughter a few years ago at North Andover High School.
Yeah,
and what a sweetheart she is! And I tell you what, she's the best athlete in the family. I watched her.
Well, I was hoping she'd. Kate, you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm hoping. I used to go watch the time, and she was a tiger. But it interested her to go farther, to be a college player, and she had the. She had the makeup to be a good athlete, but she's doing well now. Both my granddaughters, who Mike knows have CF, both graduated. They're both in work in downtown Boston, have great boyfriends, and living a great life. And one, I would take a shout out to a guys like Gordy Kluzak, who does a lot of fundraising in the late, and Joe O'Donnell for all the work they've done in raising money for CF. CF, they're going to beat CF one of these days.
I know they are. Yeah.
And to see my two granddaughters, the way they pack, my granddaughters just visited me for a week here, and just doing great. And I got to thank guys like Joe and Gordy, who raised a lot of money for that.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it's great, Gerry. Great seeing you, and we'll do it again soon, right, Bob?
Absolutely, Cheesy. Thanks, buddy.
All right, I'm going to call Nate and said, you guys treated me pretty good.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. We'll do the same.
All right, thanks a lot, fellas.
Okay. Gerry Cheevers, Hall of Famer, two-time Stanley Cup winner. That's our show, folks. Make sure you follow us at unanchoredboston.com.